Sign it over, Maya. You're not built for this world." Her husband's voice cut like glass, his parents standing behind him, eyes burning with disdain. She clutched her baby, trembling, but not from fear. "You left me in labor," she whispered, "and now you want to take what my grandmother built?" The room froze. $20 million. A legacy born of sacrifice, now dangled between betrayal and survival. This is he kicked out his wife in labor for Mistress. Hours later, her 20 Mistress secret exploded. Welcome, story lovers. From where are you? Watching? Hit the like button and drop your city name in the comments so we can see how far our story travels. The city where Maya lived pulsed with contrasts. On one side, towering glass buildings shimmered under the sun, symbols of wealth and privilege. On the other, entire neighborhoods carried the scars of generations, where families fought to survive, where ambition often collided with invisible barriers of prejudice. Maya had grown up in that second world. She was the daughter of immigrants, who had crossed oceans with nothing but hope stitched into their hearts. Her parents had worked tirelessly, their hands weathered from years of cleaning homes, washing dishes, and bending over sewing machines in dim-lit factories. Yet through it all, they raised Maya to believe she was worthy of the life denied to them. She excelled in school, pushed boundaries, and eventually became a nurse, a profession she chose not only because she loved caring for others, but also because it was one of the few doors she knew her community could reliably access in a society that often locked out those who looked like her. Maya was quiet but determined. She wore her struggles with grace, rarely showing the exhaustion that crept into her bones after long shifts. To many patients, she was just the nurse, but to those who paid attention, she was the steady hand in chaos, the voice of reassurance in fear. She had grown used to being underestimated, used to the sideways glances that carried unspoken judgments. But she didn't let them define her. When she met Daniel, she believed her story was finally turning into something brighter. Daniel was everything her parents had once prayed she might find: ambitious, articulate, and seemingly kind. He came from a different world. His family owned businesses. His skin color opened doors Maya had to claw her way toward, and his confidence carried the ease of someone who had never known the sting of being told, "You don't belong here." At first, Maya thought their differences would pull them apart, but Daniel had seemed drawn to her resilience, to her warmth. He admired how she worked her way up, how she carried dignity even when life tried to weigh her down. Slowly, trust grew, and eventually love. They married against the quiet skepticism of both families. Daniel's parents never hid their discomfort with Maya. They smiled politely at family dinners, but their words were lined with subtle dismissals. "She's hard-working, I'll give her that," or "She's different, but maybe it'll work." To them, Maya was an outsider wearing borrowed clothes at a banquet she wasn't meant to attend. Maya's parents, though deeply protective, tried to believe Daniel's promises. Their daughter deserved happiness, and they wanted to trust that his love was strong enough to shield her from the racism they had endured all their lives. In the early days of marriage, Maya clung to hope. Their small home became her sanctuary, a place where she could dream without judgment. She decorated the walls with soft colors, planted herbs in the kitchen windowsill, and filled the rooms with laughter. Though Daniel often came home late, buried under the demands of business and social engagements, she convinced herself it was temporary. Success, after all, came with sacrifice. When Maya discovered she was pregnant, her world transformed. Every heartbeat, every flutter inside her belly reminded her that something pure and hopeful was growing, even as shadows gathered around her. She wanted this child to be the bridge between two worlds, the proof that love could rise above prejudice. But cracks had begun to appear in their life together, even before the pregnancy. Daniel grew distant. less attentive, more easily irritated. He stopped listening to her stories about work. He dismissed her concerns about his long absences, brushing them off with vague excuses. Maya, ever patient, tried to believe him. She thought maybe the weight of family expectations and business responsibilities pressed harder on him than she could see. Still, there were moments when the mask slipped, when his phone lit up at odd hours and he turned it face down, when he canceled plans last minute, claiming urgent matters, when his parents' veiled comments sharpened, as though they already knew something she did not. Maya noticed, but she held on to silence. She believed that marriage meant weathering storms together, and she reminded herself daily that love required patience. She told herself not to be suspicious, not to let insecurity poison what they had built. After all, hadn't life taught her that doubt was the seed of division? The months of her pregnancy unfolded slowly, each day heavier than the last. Maya's body ached, yet she still went to work, tending to patients with the same care she longed for herself. She ignored the fatigue in her bones, the loneliness in her heart. She would press Daniel's hand to her belly when he was near, urging him to feel the child kicking, to share in the miracle. Sometimes he smiled. More often, his eyes wandered elsewhere, his thoughts far from home. The hospital staff where Maya worked loved her, though some treated her as though she was born to serve rather than lead. She swallowed their slights, hiding her pain behind professionalism. She had endured worse in her life. This was nothing new. What mattered was the life growing inside her. As the due date neared, Maya prepared quietly. She folded tiny clothes, set aside savings, and whispered prayers over the crib she built with her own hands. Daniel promised he would be there for the birth, though something in his tone made her doubt. She wanted desperately to believe him, to hold on to the image of a family united, even as her intuition screamed otherwise. Behind her gentle exterior, Maya was stronger than anyone realized. She carried scars invisible to the world, scars from every time she was told she wasn't good enough, every time she was overlooked, every time she was judged for her skin, her name, her origins. Those scars had forged her resilience, but they also reminded her how fragile belonging could be. Her pregnancy became both shield and burden. It gave her purpose, yet it also exposed the raw truths of her marriage. She could feel the distance, growing like a chasm between her and Daniel, a distance she couldn't bridge alone. But still she hoped, because hope was what had carried her family across oceans. Hope was what had fueled her parents' sacrifices. Hope was what had given her the courage to love a man whose world didn't always welcome hers. The night before, her labor began. Maya sat alone in the nursery. The soft glow of a lamp illuminated the room as she traced her fingers across the edges of the crib. She whispered promises to her unborn child, that no matter what happened, they would never feel unloved, never feel unwanted. She spoke as if the baby could already hear, as if they could absorb her strength before taking their first breath. Yet beneath her words lingered a fear she could not voice, that her child would grow into a world still poisoned by prejudice, where their worth would be questioned, where their family's love would be doubted, and worse, that Daniel's wavering loyalty would shatter the fragile dream she had built. Maya fell asleep in that room, cradled by both hope and unease. She could not yet know that within hours, her world would unravel in ways more cruel than she ever imagined. She could not yet see that the man she trusted would betray her at her most vulnerable moment. And she could not yet imagine that hidden beneath her quiet strength lay a secret so powerful it would shake everyone around her to their core. The storm was coming. She just didn't know it yet. The morning sun painted the city in gold, but Maya woke to shadows. Her labor had started with a dull ache, slow and steady, the kind that whispered a storm was coming. She tried to reach for Daniel beside her, but the bed was empty. His side was cold, sheets untouched. He hadn't come home the night before. Fear crept into her chest, not only from the pain gripping her body, but from the silence that had become far too familiar. She dialed his number, hands trembling. It rang, then stopped. No answer. She tried again. Voicemail. She whispered to herself that maybe he was on his way, maybe he was handling business, maybe he was caught up in traffic. She wanted to believe. The excuses she had clung to for months, but doubt gnawed at her like hunger. As the contractions sharpened, Maya called a taxi and made her way to the hospital. The streets blurred outside the window, each passing building reminding her how far she had come and how far she still had to go. By the time she arrived, beads of sweat rolled down her face. Nurses guided her into a room, their voices professional, but detached. Lying on the hospital bed, Maya's heart wasn't just racing from labor. It was heavy with the realization that she might be alone in this moment she had dreamed of sharing. She looked at the door every time it opened, praying to see Daniel's face. But hours passed, and still, he didn't come. When he finally appeared, his presence struck her harder than the contractions. He walked in briskly, not with the relief or concern she had longed for, but with irritation painted across his features. His eyes were cold, his posture stiff. Maya wanted to reach for him, to remind him this was their child's arrival, but before she could speak, his words pierced her like knives. "I can't stay," he said flatly. "There's someone else who needs me." Her breath caught. The room spun. She thought she had misheard, that the pain of labor distorted her senses. But then he continued, explaining with chilling detachment that he had been seeing another woman, that this was no longer their marriage, that Maya was, in his words, too much weight to carry. In that instant, Maya's world collapsed. Not. Only had the man she trusted betrayed her, but he had chosen the very moment of her vulnerability, when she was bringing their child into the world, to discard her. She felt the sting not just as a wife, but as a woman of color who had always been seen as less than, now rejected in the cruelest way possible. Daniel's abandonment wasn't just personal. It was a reflection of the silent prejudices his family had always carried. To them, Maya was never enough, never polished enough, never wealthy enough, never light-skinned enough. And now Daniel had confirmed their doubts, validating the whispers that had followed her since the day they married. Her pain was doubled, physical contractions tearing through her body and emotional ones breaking her heart. But even as tears blurred her vision, a fire lit inside her. She knew she could not crumble, not now, not with a child about to enter the world. She clenched her fists, channeling strength from generations before her, women who had endured worse and still stood tall. The nurses noticed the tension, but said nothing. Hospitals, too, carried their own quiet prejudices. Maya could feel it in the way some staff looked at her, as if she was just another statistic, another struggling minority mother left behind. No one asked where her husband was. No one offered comfort beyond the clinical. She was invisible, her heartbreak dismissed as though it didn't matter. Hours stretched into eternity, each contraction a reminder of the betrayal echoing in her mind. Maya screamed, cried, and finally, through sheer willpower, delivered her child into the world. The baby's first cry was piercing, cutting through the heavy silence that had suffocated the room. Maya held the tiny life against her chest. Tears, streaming freely now, not of despair, but of fierce love. Her child was here, and that was enough. Yet deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning of a storm that would change everything. Daniel's betrayal was not the final blow. It was the spark that would ignite truths long buried. When she was discharged days later, Maya returned home to find it hollow. Daniel's things were missing. His absence was no longer temporary. It was deliberate, and worse, whispers reached her ears, neighbors murmuring, family members exchanging glances, and Daniel's parents refusing to answer her calls. The walls closed in, and Maya realized she was being erased from the life she had built. Her community, too, reflected back a harsh truth. Some pitied her, others judged her. She heard comments disguised as sympathy. "Well, at least you have. Your baby now." Or, "Maybe it's for the best. You two were so different." But beneath the words lay the cruel suggestion that she should have expected this, that women like her didn't belong in men like Daniel's world. Each remark cut deep. She wasn't just a wife abandoned. She was a woman being told she was replaceable, unworthy, disposable. It was racism wrapped in politeness, prejudice veiled in pity, and she recognized it because she had lived it all her life. Still, Maya refused to bow. She worked harder than ever, juggling motherhood and her career. Every night, she looked at her baby and whispered the same promise. "You will never feel unwanted. You will never feel less." She clung to that vow even as exhaustion threatened to consume her. But fate wasn't done unraveling her life. One evening, as she rocked her baby to sleep, she received a call that shattered what little stability she had left. Daniel had been seen publicly with his mistress, parading her around as though their relationship had never existed. Worse, he had filed for divorce, framing Maya as the problem, accusing her of failing to fit into his life. The words cut deeper than any blade. Failing to fit. It was the same judgment society had placed on her family for decades, the same prejudice her parents had endured in silence. And now, the man she had loved had turned it into a weapon against her. Maya's body trembled with rage, not just for herself, but for every woman who had ever been discarded for not fitting an image of perfection, for every mother who had been left to raise a child alone, for every person of color told they weren't enough. She didn't know how yet, but she swore to herself that Daniel's betrayal would not define her, that the story would not end with her as the victim. Somewhere inside her, she knew she held a truth, a secret so powerful that when revealed, it would not only shatter Daniel's arrogance, but also prove every doubter wrong. And that secret was about to come to light. Days turned into weeks, and weeks blurred into months. Maya adjusted to her new rhythm of life, one filled with late-night feedings, hospital shifts, and the endless cycle of survival. She carried herself with quiet dignity, but every step felt heavier with the weight of betrayal still pressing down on her chest. Daniel, meanwhile, seemed to thrive. Social media lit up with pictures of him and his mistress, her pale skin glowing in designer dresses, his arm draped around her like she was his prize. They appeared at fundraisers, at company galas, even in the pages of glossy magazines that celebrated their power couple image. Each photograph was like a dagger to Maya's heart, a public erasure of her existence. His parents, once politely distant, now openly embraced the new woman. They praised her refinement, her elegance, her fit for the family. Legacy. Their words spread like poison, not only confirming their disdain for Maya, but amplifying the racism that had always simmered beneath their polished smiles. To them, Maya had been nothing more than a placeholder, a stepping stone until their son found someone they deemed worthy. What stung most was how society accepted the narrative so easily. Neighbors who once congratulated Maya on her marriage now avoided her eyes. Colleagues whispered behind her back, framing her as the one who couldn't keep her man. The world seemed eager to strip her of dignity, eager to turn her pain into a cautionary tale. This is what happens when you dare to cross invisible lines of race and class. But Maya was no stranger to invisibility. She had endured it in classrooms, where teachers overlooked her raised hand, in workplaces where her ideas were dismissed until repeated by someone else. She had grown accustomed to swallowing her pride to survive. Yet this time, survival wasn't enough, not with a child depending on her. She poured herself into her work, taking extra shifts at the hospital. Patients loved her for her kindness, her steady presence. But even there, she couldn't escape prejudice. Some patients looked at her name tag, hesitated to pronounce it, then asked, "Do you even speak English well enough?" Others refused to be touched by her, requesting someone else as though her hands carried something less than human. Each slight was a reminder of the uphill battle she faced, not just as a single mother, but as a woman of color in a world quick to judge. At our night, when her baby slept, Maya allowed herself to cry. But her tears weren't of weakness. They were fuel, softening the soil for seeds of strength to grow. She began keeping a journal, documenting everything: Daniel's betrayal, his family's racism, the mistreatment she endured. It was her private sanctuary, a place where she could turn pain into purpose. Then came the moment that shifted everything. One afternoon, Maya received a letter in the mail. At first, she thought it was another legal notice from Daniel's lawyers, pushing forward the divorce. But when she opened it, her hands shook. The envelope contained documents, not about the divorce, but about something much bigger. Her grandmother, whom she had always known as a quiet seamstress back in their homeland, had passed away months ago. What Maya didn't know was that her grandmother had been far more than she appeared. Buried beneath years of silence and humility was a truth. Her grandmother had been the heir to land and property seized during colonization, land that had recently been restored after decades of legal battles. And now all of it, worth nearly $20 million, had been passed down to Maya. The papers confirmed it. The fortune was hers. Maya collapsed into a chair, the letter trembling in her hands. For a moment, she couldn't breathe. All her life, she had been made to feel small, powerless, undeserving. And now, here was proof that her lineage carried not just survival, but legacy. Her family's bloodline held wealth, dignity, and history that no one, not Daniel, not his parents, not society, could erase. But with this revelation came fear. She knew what Daniel was capable of. If he discovered this inheritance, he would stop at nothing to claim it, to twist the narrative in his favor. And worse, his parents, who had spent years belittling her, would scramble to rewrite history, pretending they had always welcomed her, pretending she was worthy only now that wealth stood behind her name. Maya stared at her sleeping baby and whispered, "They will not use us. They will not break us." For weeks, she kept the secret close to her chest. She confided in no one, not even her parents, fearing that word might spread too quickly. Instead, she began researching, meeting quietly with lawyers who could protect her assets, learning how to navigate a world of wealth she had never imagined. Each step was a reminder of the power she now held, and the danger it invited. Meanwhile, Daniel's public displays grew bolder. He flaunted his mistress at charity events, often hosted at the very venues Maya had once attended by his side. He painted himself as the picture of success, while simultaneously dragging Maya through court, demanding custody rights he hadn't earned and financial settlements that left her scraping by. The hypocrisy enraged her. He had abandoned her in labor, left her to bleed and cry alone, yet now he painted himself as the noble father wronged by a bitter ex-wife. The media, too, seemed eager to believe his version of events. Few questioned his actions. After all, he was wealthy, respected, white. Maya was the opposite, easier to doubt, easier to dismiss. But Maya's patience had limits. She wasn't going to let her story be written by those who despised her. One night, she attended a community meeting at a local cultural center, bringing her baby along. The center was filled with people who, like her, had known struggle, who had tasted prejudice, and kept fighting. For the first time in months, Maya felt seen. She shared a fraction of her story, not the inheritance, not yet, but the pain of abandonment, the sting of racism, the determination to rise above. The room responded with quiet nods, murmurs of solidarity. Her voice carried weight there. That evening, as she walked home under the glow of streetlights, Maya felt something shift. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was preparing. The secret of her inheritance pulsed like a heartbeat in her chest. She knew she couldn't hide it forever. And she also knew the moment it surfaced, everything would explode. Not only Daniel's carefully crafted image, but also the very foundation of prejudice his family had built their lives upon. What Maya didn't yet realize was that the storm she feared was already circling. Someone had discovered her secret, and whispers were making their way toward Daniel. The stage was set. The betrayal was public. The racism was raw. And the truth she carried was about to turn their world upside down. The night was unusually quiet, a stillness that seemed almost unnatural. Maya had just laid her baby down in the crib, humming a lullaby her mother used to sing, when the sound of tires crunching against gravel broke the silence. She froze, her chest tightening. At this hour, visitors were rare. A pair of headlights cut across her window. Maya's breath quickened. She walked carefully to the front door and peered through the curtain. Her pulse spiked the moment she saw the sleek black car parked in her driveway. Daniel stepped out, his expensive suit gleaming under the porch light, his confidence radiating in every stride. Behind him, another door opened. Maya's stomach twisted. His mistress emerged, wrapped in fur, her hand linked with his as though she belonged in places Maya never would. And then, another vehicle, larger, darker, pulled in behind. From it, Daniel's parents climbed out. Their posture was rigid, their eyes sharp. The entire family. At her doorstep, Maya's hands trembled as she gripped the doorknob. Her instincts screamed to shut off the lights, to pretend she wasn't home, but she knew hiding would only embolden them. She opened the door slowly, standing tall though her knees wobbled. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice calm but edged with steel. Daniel's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "May we come in? We need to talk." Maya's gaze darted from him to the others. His parents hovered just behind, their expressions practiced, masks of politeness that couldn't disguise disdain. The mistress smirked, as if savoring her victory. "No," Maya said firmly. "Say whatever you came for here." Daniel's eyes darkened. He glanced at his father, who gave him a curt nod. Then Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We know, Maya, about the inheritance." The words dropped like thunder, her chest constricted. So the secret had slipped out. She schooled her face into stillness, refusing to give them the satisfaction of watching her panic. "And?" His mother's voice cut in, silky yet venomous. "My dear, 20 million is not something you can manage alone. It's dangerous, in the wrong hands." Her eyes flicked pointedly to Maya's skin, her background unspoken, but clear. Maya's jaw clenched. The racism was as plain as day, woven into every syllable. The mistress stepped forward, her hand tightening on Daniel's arm. "It must be overwhelming, all that responsibility. But Daniel has the experience, the family, the network. He can make sure your child's future is secured. It's what's best for everyone." Maya's stomach turned. The audacity, this woman who had watched her bleed alone in a hospital bed, now dared to frame herself as the savior of her child's future. Daniel's tone sharpened. "Sign it over, Maya. You're not built for this world. You don't have the education, the connections. Let me handle it. For the baby. Her baby's soft cry carried faintly from the nursery. The sound steeled her spine. She looked him dead in the eyes. "You left me in labor? You left your child before their first breath, and now you want me to hand over the only thing that belongs to us?" Daniel flinched, his mask cracking, his jaw tightened, his nostrils flaring. His mother rushed in to fill the silence. "You're being emotional. This is about legacy. Wealth must be stewarded properly. If you cling to pride, you'll destroy everything." Maya felt her blood burn. She had been told all her life she was too emotional, too loud, too much. Now they used the same weapon to strip her of power. She raised her chin. "My pride? Or your entitlement? You think because I don't look like you, I can't protect what's mine. But this isn't yours to claim. It's my family's. My grandmother's. Her sacrifices built it, and I will honor her by guarding it." The air grew colder. Daniel's father's face reddened, his voice ablade. "Don't test us, girl. Wealth attracts wolves. Without us, you'll drown in lawsuits, taxes, scams. You'll beg for us to save you." The word girl cut deeper than a knife. Stripped of her name, her identity, reduced to something beneath them. She swallowed the sting and steadied her breath. Maya stepped forward, the porch light bathing her face. "You've mistaken me for someone who fears drowning, but I've lived underwater my whole life. Every glance that told me I didn't belong, every insult muttered under breath, every door slammed in my face. I learned to breathe where you thought I couldn't. You don't scare me." "Not anymore." Daniel's composure unraveled. His voice rose, sharp and frantic. "Don't be foolish. You think this money makes you powerful? It paints a target on your back. You're naive, Maya. You'll lose everything." Maya's laugh was bitter, edged with pain. "I already lost everything the night you walked out. But what I gained is worth more than you'll ever understand. My child, my strength. And now, the proof that my family was never what you claimed. Less, small, replaceable. We are legacy, and you can't erase that," his mistress sneered. "You're delusional. Do you really think you can raise a child and manage millions without failing?" Maya's eyes locked onto hers. "Yes, because I won't be alone. I have generations behind me. My grandmother's blood, my parents' sacrifices, every woman who has ever been told she wasn't enough. I carry them all, and they will not let me fail." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the night seemed to hold its breath. Daniel's father finally spoke, his words venom. "You'll regret this." Maya took a step closer, her voice unwavering. "No, you'll regret underestimating me." The baby cried again, louder this time, as if echoing her defiance. Maya turned her head slightly, listening, her resolve deepening. She shifted her stance, shielding the doorway with her body. "This conversation is over," she said. "Leave my property, now!" Daniel's mother gasped, her hand clutching her pearls. His father's eyes blazed with fury. The mistress muttered curses under her breath. But it was Daniel whose face betrayed the deepest wound. His pride shattered, his entitlement denied. "This isn't over," he spat, his voice trembling. "I'll drag you through court. I'll take the baby if I have to. I'll ruin you." Maya didn't flinch. She leaned in, her voice quiet but cutting. "You already ruined yourself the day you abandoned us. The courts may hear your lies, but the truth is written in every scar I carry. And when I speak, they will hear me. They will see me. And for the first time in your life, Daniel, you will not win." The words landed like a final blow. Daniel staggered back, his jaw clenching, his fists tightening at his sides. Without another word, he turned and stormed toward the car. His mistress scrambled after him, his parents following with icy glares. Engines roared, tires screeched. The cars disappeared into the darkness, leaving only silence in their wake. Maya stood alone on the porch, the winter air biting her skin, her heart racing. She exhaled slowly, her body trembling, not from fear, but from release. For months, she had carried the weight of silence, swallowing humiliation, enduring abandonment. Tonight, she had returned every wound with truth. She stepped back inside, closing the door firmly. The house was quiet again, save for the soft cries of her baby. Maya lifted her child into her arms, holding them close, her tears flowing freely. Now, not of despair, but of fierce, unyielding love. "They thought we were weak," she whispered. "They thought we would break, but we are still here, and we will rise." The baby's tiny fingers curled around hers, and in that moment, Maya knew the war was far from over. Court battles would come, lies would spread, the weight of racism and prejudice would press harder than ever. But she also knew something else. She was ready. Because the climax of her pain had forged something indestructible. Strength that no betrayal could shatter. Dignity that no insult could erase. Power that no privilege could silence. And as the night closed around her, Maya whispered one final vow: they will never own our story again. Dear audience, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to give it a like. It really helps. The house was still, its walls holding the echoes of voices that had threatened to fracture Maya's spirit. She sat in the nursery, rocking gently as her baby nestled against her chest. The rhythm of the child's breathing was steady, a quiet lull that calmed the storm still churning in her heart. For a long time, Maya simply sat there, letting the silence cradle her. She felt the tremors leave her body, felt the rawness of the confrontation settle into her bones. Tonight had been a test of her will, and though she had stood firm, the reality of what lay ahead weighed heavily. She thought of Daniel's threats, lawsuits, custody battles, ruin. He had the wealth, the influence, the connections, the kind of power that could twist truths and manipulate systems built to favor men like him. Maya knew the road would not be fair, but she also knew something deeper now. She was no longer afraid. The next morning, she awoke to the first light of dawn streaming through the curtains. Her phone buzzed incessantly with messages. News traveled fast in their small town. A neighbor had seen Daniel's car, had recognized his parents, had whispered to others. Soon enough, Maya's stand would not be a private moment, but a public story. And with that came a choice: retreat into silence or step into the fire. Maya chose the latter. She called an attorney recommended by a friend from her community, someone who had dedicated his career to protecting women and minorities from exploitation. The man listened patiently as she recounted every detail. At the end, his voice was steady, reassuring. "You have more power than you think. They'll try to intimidate you, but truth has weight, Maya, and you're not alone in this." The words felt like a lifeline. For the first time in months, Maya felt the faint stirrings of hope. Still, hope did not erase the hardships. As days turned into weeks, the pressure intensified. Daniel's lawyers sent letters filled with legal jargon, meant to intimidate. His parents paraded their reputation, whispering poison into influential ears. The mistress flaunted her new role in his life, posting images on social media that seemed designed to humiliate Maya. Yet each time Maya felt herself slipping into despair, she looked at her baby and remembered why she was fighting. She was no longer just a woman wronged. She was a mother protecting her child's future, the guardian of a legacy meant to break chains, not reinforce them. Her community began to rally around her. Women from different walks of life, teachers, nurses, single mothers, elders, reached out with messages of support. Some shared their own stories of being dismissed, disrespected, or stripped of what they had earned simply because of their race or gender. Their voices blended into a chorus that strengthened Maya's resolve. Every night, she wrote in a journal. She recorded her fears, her hopes, her memories of her grandmother who had first secured the fortune that now sparked such greed. She wrote of how her grandmother had scrubbed floors, sewn clothes, and endured endless discrimination to save a single dollar at a time. She wrote of her parents, who carried the weight of expectations and sacrifices on their shoulders so Maya could have a chance at dignity. And she wrote of the night on the porch, how the fire inside her had burned brighter than the cold of their cruelty. Those pages became her shield. Whenever doubt crept in, she reread her words, reminding herself that she was not fighting just for money, but for justice. One evening, weeks after the confrontation, she sat with her lawyer in a dimly lit office. He spread out papers before, her legal strategies outlined in precise detail. His eyes met hers. They'll drag this through the mud. They'll attack your credibility, your fitness as a mother, even your identity. Are you prepared for that? Maya inhaled deeply, her hand steady on the table. I've been attacked for who I am my entire life. I've been told I don't belong, that I'm too much or not enough. If I survive that without a shield, I can survive this with the truth. Her lawyer nodded. Then we'll fight. And so the battle began. The courtroom became an arena where truths and lies collided. Daniel's side arrived in tailored suits, armed with arrogance and entitlement. They painted Maya as unstable, unprepared, unworthy. They used her background as a weapon, twisting every hardship into a flaw. But Maya stood firm. She presented evidence of abandonment, proof of the night she had gone into labor alone. Witnesses spoke, nurses who had seen her suffering, neighbors who had watched Daniel's neglect unfold. Each testimony chipped away at the carefully crafted facade he had built. It wasn't easy. The process was draining, each day leaving Maya exhausted, her nerves frayed. But each night, when she returned home to her baby's smile, she remembered why she endured. Through it all, one truth rang clear. This was bigger than her. This was about every woman who had been silenced, every person of color who had been dismissed as unworthy of wealth, dignity, or legacy. Her fight was theirs, too. And as she walked out of the courthouse after another grueling day, she realized that no matter the outcome, she had already reclaimed something priceless, her voice. The final day in court arrived with a weight that pressed against Maya's chest. She wore a simple navy dress, her hair pulled back, her posture tall. She knew the courtroom would be filled with eyes that doubted her, whispered judgments cloaked in the same prejudice she had faced all her life. But she walked in carrying something stronger than fear. She carried truth. Daniel sat across the aisle, polished and smug. His mistress perched beside him, her gaze sharp with silent triumph. His parents loomed behind, whispering instructions to lawyers as though they owned the very air in the room. Their confidence was unshaken, but Maya sensed the cracks beneath it. The proceedings began. Arguments flew back and forth, each side pushing, pulling, twisting the narrative. Daniel's lawyers spoke of instability, of Maya's supposed inability to manage wealth or raise a child alone. They used coded language, words that carried the sting of racism without ever saying it outright: unfit, inexperienced, unsophisticated. But when Maya's turn came, she did not crumble. She stood at the witness stand, her voice steady. She spoke of abandonment, of strength in the face of betrayal, of her grandmother's sacrifices. She laid bare the truth. That money was never the heart of this fight. It was dignity, justice, and the right to decide her child's future without interference from those who had discarded them. The courtroom was hushed as she finished. For the first time, Maya saw hesitation flicker across Daniel's face. His arrogance wavered, if only for a moment. Days later, the ruling was delivered. Maya would retain control of the inheritance. Custody remained hers, with Daniel granted. Only limited visitation under strict terms. It was not a perfect victory, no battle against entrenched privilege ever was, but it was enough. It was hers. When the gavel struck, Maya closed her eyes. Relief washed over her like a tide. She had not only protected her child's future, but also carved out a space where her voice mattered, where the legacy of her family was preserved. Outside. The courthouse. Reporters gathered, microphones and cameras thrust toward her. Maya could have walked away in silence, but instead she paused. She held her baby close, looked into the flashing lights, and spoke. "This fight was never just about money," she said, her voice carrying over the crowd. "It was about respect, about the right to exist without being told we are less because of where we come from or the color of our skin. For too long, people like me have been silenced, erased, dismissed. Today I say, no more. My grandmother's blood built this legacy, and my child will grow up knowing it cannot be taken away." The words rippled outward, echoed in headlines, replayed across screens. Some mocked, some cheered, but none could erase the truth she had spoken. In the weeks that followed, life began to settle into something resembling normalcy. Maya returned to her quiet home, now filled with laughter and the everyday chaos of raising a child. The inheritance she once feared became not a burden, but a tool, a way to build, to heal, to honor her grandmother's memory. She donated to local schools, funded scholarships for young women of color, and created programs to help single mothers find stability. Her actions spoke louder than any courtroom drama ever could. She turned pain into power, betrayal into opportunity. She proved, not just to Daniel and his family, but to an entire community watching, that resilience could rewrite the narrative imposed by racism and arrogance. Yet even in victory, scars remained. There were nights when Maya sat awake, replaying the cruel words spoken against her, the venom disguised as civility. She knew that racism was not defeated in a single courtroom. It lived in systems, in whispers, in the quiet ways people tried to strip others of dignity. But she also knew something else. She was not alone anymore. The chorus of voices that had rallied behind her grew louder each day. Women reached out to thank her for standing tall. Young girls said they saw themselves in her story. Elders reminded her that she carried the weight of many before her and that she had honored them well. Maya realized her fight was part of a larger tapestry. She was one thread, woven into a history of struggle and triumph. And though the battles ahead would be many, she had proven that strength could come from the most unlikely places: a quiet home, a rocking chair, the arms of a child. On the anniversary of her grandmother's passing, Maya took her baby to the cemetery. She laid flowers at the headstone, her fingers tracing the carved letters. She whispered softly, "We did it. They tried to take everything, but we stood. Because of you, we will always stand." The wind rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of earth and blossoms. In that moment, Maya felt the presence of her grandmother, not as a ghost, but as a guiding force, a reminder that legacy was more than wealth. It was courage passed down, dignity reclaimed, and love that endured. As she left the cemetery, Maya held her baby higher, kissed their forehead, and whispered, "Your story will begin where mine nearly broke, and you will know that you are enough." The sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. Maya walked forward, her steps steady, her spirit unbroken. She had weathered the storm of betrayal, stood against the fire of racism, and emerged not just whole, but stronger. And as her story spread, one question lingered in the minds of all who heard it. If dignity, resilience, and love could triumph, Against such odds, what excuse did the rest of us have to remain silent in the face of injustice? Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel for more powerful stories and new videos.